Hi, so this is the second video of our simple CRUD operation. In our first video, we added a status field to our list of departments, and we built out the dynamic hyperlinks so that we can edit and pass the primary key through our URL variable. This next video is going to walk through the steps to build out that edit department page. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm using my Code Tasty IDE. I'm going to build a new file, and I'm going to call this edit department.php, and I'm going to go ahead and open that. Now, I haven't built anything yet for the department in order for me to add anything. So I'm going to go ahead and build out this form in HTML, and then I will come back and we will walk through the process of doing that actual update. So go ahead and build out your form. I would recommend that you use your form from the user registration and just change your names to match the field names in your department table. Okay? Okay, so I have created a very simple HTML form with just an H1, a form action. I'm going to call this page again with my form action. Here I have, there's 5 fields in the database department ID that is automatically created, so I don't have to include that. Department name, number of employees, building number, and status. So in my record, I have that information. I could always put the department ID and just make that be a read-only field. I could just add it here this way, or add it as an input type, and I'm going to call it read-only. And I'll show you what my value will look like. Okay, so because I don't have anything happening here other than this form, I can click on my edit button, and you're getting that primary key, but I'm not running a database query yet. So this is what my form looks like right now. Okay, and this is the same form that you can cut and paste and use to add a new department, which will also be part of this. Okay, so let's go back to our code. Now what I want to do is, when I code, I do everything little piece by little piece, and I start with what I know. That's why I started with my form, because I'm pretty good at making HTML forms at this point. And then I'm going to adapt this form to what I want it to be. So what I want to do next is I want to do this database query. So in order to do that, I'm going to call in my require, and so far I'm going to try and do this without having to echo out all of my HTML for this form. So I'm going to require, and I have moved over my MySQL connection from the last homework assignment to this. So I can just reference it. Okay, so here is my require. And then I'm going to go ahead and build out my query. So it's going to look something like this. Again, I'm going to keep doing these PHP commands. The first thing that I want to do is I want to grab that department ID that's coming through my URL. So again, if I look at it, I just called it ID. So what I want to do is I want to grab that. So I'm going to go ahead and create my variable. Let me spell it right. Department ID equals, and then I'm going to use the get special variable, and I'm going to call it, I'm going to reference it as ID because that's how I called it over. Okay, so I know that I need to get this. This is going to give me an error if I don't have this, but for right now I'm just trying to keep this as simple as possible. We'll go ahead and put in some error checking soon. Build out my query statement. It's going to look something like this. Select all from department where department ID equals department ID. And let me put my semicolon there. Okay, and then I'm going to create my result, MySQL query. Going to reference the connection from the MySQL and my query. And again, I can do a lot of error checking. I'm doing the very simplest things here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that result. Now this should only return one row of data. Okay, so first let me double check that this is working by outputting. I like to do some user testing, outputting my department ID, and then I'm going to echo out my query so I can see what this looks like. Okay, so this is my very simple testing to see if my whole process is working so far. So again, take a look at that. First thing that you need is that MySQL connection file, and then we need to grab the ID from our URL, which is going to be get, not post. We're going to build out our query. We're going to create that. We're going to run that query. Then we're going to save the results of that query. And we're going to, this is for user testing. So this is just user testing so that I can see what's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And go back. And I get an error. So let me go ahead and figure out what it is that I did wrong. Okay, everyone, I figured out my silly mistake, and that was that I didn't have the correct file name here in my require. I had written MySQL connection, but my file is actually called MySQL connect. And the way I finally figured this out is I commented out things. You can still see here I have commented this out. I moved my user testing up. I commented out the require, and as soon as I did that, I noticed that my echo started for the department ID and query. So I was able to troubleshoot and determine that it was something either with my require statement or with the connection itself. And so I looked back at my list departments and I looked at the require statement, and that's when I realized that I didn't have the name of the file correct. So that's where my problem was. Okay, so let's go ahead and uncomment out my result in row and see what happens. Save that, and if you're using the Code Tasty interface, it is connecting to our web server, and sometimes that takes a minute or two. You just have to keep refreshing. Sometimes I'll hit control refresh or shift refresh. So here is my my user testing. That is my department ID coming through, and this is what my query is going to look like. Select from department where department ID equals 3. We can take a look at another one just to show that it's dynamic. There's the 2. So everything looks good so far. I'm not getting any errors. So that is what I have right now. Now, at this point, you can make a decision. You can create a bunch of variables and use those variables to do your values inside of your statements, or you can do your values and put in PHP code for every single one of them. So I'll go ahead and do these PHP codes for every single one. I'm going to do an echo of the row and the name of the field. This one's going to be department ID. Oops. And close that bracket and put my semicolon and then close my PHP echo statement. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that value and I'm going to copy the entire thing. I'm going to put that in every single one of these. So value, this one is going to be department name. Reuse your code as often as you can. Value, this one is num of employees. This one is going to be building number. And this one is going to be status. Okay, if I did all that right, oh, I'm going to just put some spaces in here. Make sure that my code isn't all on top of each other. Okay, so let's see if this works. I'll save this. This is how I do it every single time. Do a little tiny bit, make sure it works. That way, instead of writing all this code, I can go through and go, okay, you know what? Is this right? Is this correct? Department ID is 3. Can I change that? No, I can't change it. Can I change this? Yes, I can change that one. So all these other ones I should be able to change. So I'm just going to refresh. So there we go. That part is working. Okay, so this is good. And I'm going to continue on with building out my update statement, because right now if I make some changes and I click submit, nothing's going to happen because I'm not calling anything. There's nothing else happening here. Okay, so what I want to do is there's a couple things I want to do. The number one most important thing here is that when I make this update, I need to somehow pass it my department ID. So because I added that field as a read-only, it will send the department ID to this page, and it's kind of saving me from having to use a hidden form field. If I wanted to do a hidden form field, I could do that. I could say input type hidden instead of text and do the same thing. But since I'm outputting it to the page, I don't need it to be hidden. It's because I put that read-only in, nobody will be able to modify it. So I'm pretty good here. Let's see what comes through when I submit this form. Okay, so what I have done is I put in an if statement here, and I'm going to just print out all of the form variables if the server request method is post. So if the server request method is post, that means we know that there is a form that has been submitted, our form, and I need to do the update process. Else, I'm going to get the information for the department ID and create my form. Okay, so let's see if I can get this to work. Thinking I'm probably going to have some problem here with my form, so I can do a couple things here. One, I can comment this out for now, or two, I can use exit, and that will terminate the script for me. So if I use exit, it's not going to do anything else. I did realize that I made another mistake here. I did not include the form method. So I need to have the form method set to post, because if I don't, the default is get, and then all those form fields will come through the URL. We don't want that. And not only would that be a problem, but then it will never come to my request method post because it's not posting anything. Okay, so let's run this through the process here. I'm going to go back to my list of departments. I'm going to edit my administration and change this to Elite Ops. Change my employees building number to E, and I can't change my ID, so that's good. And I'm going to go ahead and submit that. So here is the dump of my values. Department name, Elite Ops, number of employees, 22, building number E, status A, and there is my exit statement that says testing. So I know that works. That those are coming from my print R, which is a dump of the entire post array and all of the variables that's included in it. So from here, I want to go ahead and start building my update query. One of the easiest ways to do this is to store all of these variables. So this is going to be very similar to when you add a record to the database, but in this case we're going to be updating everything. So I've got my department name. I'm just going to go ahead and create my variables. Department name is going to equal post department name, and so on and so forth. I'll pause this so you don't have to watch me type all this, and we'll be right back. Okay, so here are my form fields. I forgot I need to put my department ID in here again. Department ID. And this should be coming over exactly as the other ones. Okay, so I have recorded everything to variables, and then I'm going to build out my update query. And so instead of having it just be called query, I'm going to call it update query, and I'm going to try and make it look nice so it's easy to read. So we're going to do update department set. And this update query is very important because you need to make sure that you include your where clause. So we're going to set all these variables. So set department name equal to department name, and that's a string, so we have to put it in quotation. Remember to use single quotations if you're using a double quotation out here. And we're going to keep going. We're going to do num of employees equal num of employees. Oh, that actually is an int, so I don't need to put it in that. Building number is a string, so I will use my quotation. And status is a string, so I will go ahead and put that. Now, do not stop here, because if you do and you run this update query, what's going to happen is every single one of your records are going to be set to this same department's information. So this is the most important part, where department ID equals department ID. And go ahead and close that. So here is my update query. Again, what I want to do is I'm just going to echo this out because I want to be really careful that I'm doing the right things here and catch any problems before they occur. Okay, so take note on that update statement. Update department, there's no comma. Set department name equal to, and then comma for every single one of these fields, comma. When you get to the last one, no comma, and then where department ID equals department ID. So I'm going to output this query just to make sure this looks good. Let me go back to my page. I'm going to refresh, give it a second. Here's my Elite Ops again. I'm going to go ahead and submit. And here's my query. Update department, set department name equal to elite ops, number of employees to 15, building number to C, status A, where department ID equals, I don't have a department ID in here. So I need to figure out where the problem is. So the department ID is not being set. So department ID is not coming through with my department name. Okay, it does not look like that read-only value is coming through. Let me take a look and see if I did something wrong with that form again. Department ID. Oh, do you see the problem here? I do. Department ID. I did an input type, a read-only, and a value, but I never gave it a name. So that is why it is not coming through. So my mistake. Making lots of good mistakes for you guys to learn from. So let me go back and try that again. I need to refresh my page anytime I make a change to it. And because of that delay, sometimes I like to go all the way out. Let me try this again. Okay, here we go. Department ID is coming through. See, I should have caught that when I first was doing that dump, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing that dump. I will take all that stuff out afterwards. Update department. Okay, everything looks good. Where department ID equals 3. So that looks good. Now, once I know it looks good, I can feel confident about actually running it, because you don't want to be running things if it's going to mess everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and comment out this echo, comment out my print R, as I don't need those for testing. Now I'm going to go ahead and actually make that connection. I'm going to call this update result instead of result. Update result equals MySQL query connection, and this time I'm going to call it update query because I want it to run this query. And I need to double check that everything updated correctly, and the way I can do that is run an if statement. If update result, so if this was a success, then I'm going to echo record successfully updated, else echo update failed. Okay. And that looks good. So let's see if this works. Oh, I gotta put semicolons after my statements here. Okay, let's see if we get this to work. All right, I'm gonna go back, go all the way out. I need to get rid of these user testings. Okay, let's see if I can do elite ops and 22 again. Submit. Record successfully updated. Now, at this point, where would you want your website visitor to go, your admin? So we could do a couple things. One, we could show the record again and have them see that the changes were made, or we can send them back to our list departments page and see there is the change. So that is up to you as the designer of this. If you want to redirect the website and not have them come here, we can do something like this. We could say something like redirect to list users, or not users, list department .php, and this will route us back to that list. Let me see, and message equals okay. So let me see if that will work, because at this point, after that redirect, they're not going to see the echo anyway. So if it doesn't work, we're going to do update failed, and it would probably be nice in that case to show them the form or something like that. Okay, so let's try this again. I'm going to change this to operations, change this to 32, click submit, and nothing is happening. So let me see, maybe my redirect isn't working. Let me double check my syntax on that, as it does not look, it is white. So one moment, please. Okay, I found my problem. So the redirect to is not a built-in function. It is a function that many people use that basically will allow you to call it with a URL that will create this header. So what this is doing is it's telling your web server to go to this page. So header location, and this is the page. I'm going to throw that message equals okay on there because I'd like to be able to output a message. And then this echo isn't going to happen. I'm just going to go ahead and do an exit just so that the rest of the script stops running. So let's go ahead and test that out. I'll make sure that works. So here's my elite operations. I want to put my elite operations back to 22. And I'm going to go ahead and submit. And as soon as I do that, it's going to run that process update, and it's going to come back to my list of departments, and you can see here my number 22. What I want to do on this page now is I want to build an if statement that says if there's a message of okay, I want to print a little statement that says your record has been updated, so that we're giving our website user some feedback. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so that's going to be in list departments, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to check to see if message exists, and if it doesn't exist, then I'm going to go ahead and just set it to nothing. Okay, for this last bit, we're going to add an if statement. I want to output the message directly under my H1 heading of the list of departments so that it's something that can be seen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an is set. So if is set. So if there is a message variable in the get URL, then go ahead and assume that the record has been updated. I suppose I could even go further and say if is set and equals to okay, do this. But again, we're doing this very simple. So this is where a lot of the cool things can come in with your application and where that user experience really pays off. But for right now, the only time I'm sending this message is when the record was updated successfully. So this is something you could add to as your system gets more complex. So let's go ahead and see how that works. Here's my elite operations. I'm going to change it to 32. Submit, and here you go. Your record has been updated. Now, making this look pretty in CSS, you could always set that to an ID with a or not even add ID, I guess you could use a class, and you could have that set to success, which maybe that turns into like a green message or something along those lines. So this is how we do the update portion of CRUD. We will also use this for our, oh, you know what, this is wrong, this should say status. We'll also get our status set up and undo our department information here. The only other thing that you need to do for your department is do a create to add a record, and usually I like to create a hyperlink somewhere up at the top that or a button, I guess, whichever you prefer, to add a brand new department. I'm not going to show you how to do that one because that one you're an expert at now. If you want, you can combine this edit, add, delete all together on one page. You'd have to use some if statements to make that happen, but you can do it that way, or you can do it in two separate files, with one being the add user and one being the edit user. For beginning students, having the two separate files is probably the way to go to keep your code as simple as possible. So hope this made sense to you, and I hope you can walk through this process with your homework assignment and be able to take the same information and put it into your user aspect too. Thanks. Goodbye.